Good evening, Crime Talk aficionados. My name is Scott Reich, and this is Crime Talk. Thanks for joining us for our Tuesday night live program. We appreciate you taking the time to join us. We have a great show for you this evening. As promised, if you watched our video today, we're going to be talking about Suzanne Morphew. Big week. Obviously, the autopsy has finally been released to the public. The autopsy was originally done back in September of 2023. And the opinions are that based upon the information provided to the medical examiner, to me at the time of this report, it is my opinion that Suzanne Morphew, a 52-year-old adult white female, died as a result of homicide, which I think the next thing here is very important, by unspecified means in the setting of butorphanol, azaparone, and metormidine intoxication. I know, terrible pronunciation with those. If only I had my daughter here who could pronounce all that stuff for me correctly. Anyway, you know, when you're a lawyer and not a doctor, you have permission to sound out phonetically big medical jargon. It's true. It may even be a state law somewhere. You know, I'm joking. Don't take me seriously on that. But that's the gist of it. These drugs are marked as a compounded injectable chemical immobilizer for wildlife, providing pharmacologically reversible analgesia and sedation and immobilization. If more information becomes available, this report may be amended. So boom, that's the big news of the week thus far in the Suzanne Morphew case. Obviously, this case goes back to May of 2020, Mother's Day of 2020, when Suzanne Morphew goes out for a bike ride and allegedly never comes back, right? They find her bicycle, her helmet down a ravine. Her husband was not there. He was supposedly on the other side of the Continental Divide here on the Western Slope, actually supposedly working not far, just down the street that we are on here at the lovely Crime Talk Studios off of 120th, just down the street from Broomfield, Colorado. And obviously, as most people know, Barry Morphew was the person of interest by the police almost originally. And one could argue, certainly the defense did, that the prosecution and the investigators did not look to alternate suspects. And was it incompetence, or was it intentionally trying to mislead the defense and the judge and the public that there was this other information out there? Well, I guess that will soon be determined, as obviously Linda Stanley and the prosecutors and many of the lead investigators on that case have all been sued in civil court by Barry Morphew because his case was dismissed, and his attorney, Iris Itan, who is a very good, very smart, very aggressive attorney, literally has made it her mission to prosecute, whether civilly prosecute, maybe even criminally, to try and take away their licenses, to make them pay when somebody has been wrongfully accused. And that'll be determined. Linda Stanley still has a grievance pending with the attorney regulation people. Probably not fun. Her office, was basically in total disarray, so to speak, after this. She had to bring in experienced prosecutors, and looks like they had some issues as well, which would explain why a lot of people got off that case real darn quick when turns out maybe things weren't being turned over as accurately as possible. Now, I get it. Small town, big crime, notoriety. People are going to, I don't know, they're going to say, oh, it's not that complicated. But in today's world, the amount of technology that is available for the police to do their investigation, it is incredible. And the reason I say that is because then people like me who are defending somebody, we have to go and review it all. We have to go through it. We have to hire experts to figure out what the heck does this mean? Can you verify this? Does this make sense? Has it been manipulated in any way whatsoever? And it is, it's becoming more and more difficult. And with so much of the amount of the technology information that can be obtained, you got to go check it out. Not to digress here too quickly, but look at the Koberger matter. They got all that information, all the search warrants, every app on your phone. Let's get a search warrant from them. What'd you buy? What didn't you buy? Let's get the cell phone tower data. Hey, let's do even better than that. Let's look at the GPS data. It never stops. So it just keeps coming and coming and coming. So I think the prosecution, when you have a lot of attorneys originally on the case that didn't have a whole lot of experience in a big case like that, it can be overwhelming to them. And that's probably why they had some of their missteps early on, not to mention when you have the lead investigator who basically gets fired because he says the case isn't ready yet to proceed. And that's not what the elected DA, Linda Stanley, wanted to hear. So ultimately the case gets dismissed, and the prosecutor gets up, makes her little statement at her press conference and saying, we're dismissing this case, but we know when the snow melts, we're going to find her. And that was back almost, in 2022, remember? And Barry Morphew walked out the door, boom, drove out of town. And there you have it, right? And then last September of 2023, they find her remains down there in Saguchi County. I've lived in Colorado all my life, and I've heard it pronounced about 10 different ways. Then you have Chaffee County. It depends. Even when you're there and you ask the people, how's it pronounced? Oh, it can be pronounced either way. Really? So, that's what, you have that a lot in a lot of Western states. A lot of our counties are named after Indian tribes and things like that, because that's where they predominantly were. And so they named the county after that. Arapahoe County was the Arapahoe Nation, so to speak. So that's just the way that is. So, and then, like I said, the question then becomes, well, since September, right? So we got September. They find her, the autopsy date September 27th. So let's just start October. October, November, December, January, February, March, April, coming up in May. So we're almost 8 months since they found Suzanne Morphew. Now, obviously, the police aren't going to tell us what they've been doing for the last nearly 8 months, but it does make you kind of think, where's this headed? Where is it headed? And this is the part that is going to be the most difficult, okay? The El Paso County coroner, which is Colorado Springs, but that's the bigger county, stated that this is ruled a homicide as it relates to Suzanne Morphew by unspecified means. And then there's some mention that there was a bullet found in the general location. So it makes you wonder, well, where is that? But as we read the other day, there's not much left of Miss Morphew, unfortunately, because more than likely, when you go out there into the not desert, but the mountains there, you are left in a semi-shallow grave. Let's face it, you're not going to be protected from the wildlife in the area. And do you think some bear or some mountain lion or something along those lines that are in that area or other animals would um, uh, come in to that effect? Yes. So you need to be able to try to tell, right? If most of her remains aren't there, you're not going to say how she died. The bottom line is what it is. They submitted 3 large paper bags containing bones, 7 brown paper bags containing clothing, and 7 envelopes containing the items to be described. The skeletal remains are submitted in 3 bags. The 3 bags contain multiple human and non-human bones, and fragments, dirt, and a wood fragment. The submitted human bones include the skull with mandible, sacrum, and multiple ribs, bilateral radii and ulni, and manubrium and sternum, right scapula, clavicle, right and left femora, right and left tibia, and fibula, and multiple vertebrae. None of the bones bear any residual soft tissue. The right femoral head, femur fragment, and femur head is retained for toxicology testing to release for forensic anthropology examination. So obviously the whole stuff isn't there. And the reason why I mention that is because, we talk about this kind of all the time on this show, is that the government has to be able to prove certain things. Frank, can we put up the old Loved real quick? Okay. Now, this is a quick summary of kind of what every case boils down to. Okay. You got the location, the offense, the victim, identification, date, and time. And this is basically what a prosecutor does. If you talk to most prosecutors, a lot of times they'll have their own little Loved there. I assure you the defense has theirs in their little file with a quick synopsis of the facts and location, right? You can open your file, look at it. Okay, it occurred on this date, right? They found the remains down there in Saguchi County in Colorado. So obviously a murder can be tried in this goes to jurisdiction issues. Obviously, a murder can be tried in any court of general jurisdiction. So the district court in Colorado, they have to prove that the crime took place in Colorado. Then the question becomes which venue. Was it in Chaffee County or was it in Saguch where she actually died? You can prosecute in either county. Obviously, the offense, you want to have the charge, first-degree murder, which is that the defendant unlawfully, which means without legal permission or justification, caused the death of another human being. Those are the elements of the offense, right? The victim, obviously, you need to be able to identify the victim. The case of Suzanne Morphew, she has been identified through dental records, and they're going to do some DNA testing, but there seems to be little doubt that those were, in fact, the remains of Suzanne Morphew. There may have been some identifying information on the in the grave that was collected and things of that nature. Then you have identification, and that goes to a defendant. And so what do you have to do? Identification, right? They have to prove that it is the charged defendant that did it. Not someone that looked like him, not someone using his identity, but it was, in fact, the defendant that is charged. Not somebody that happened to be in the area, but it was him. He's the one that committed the crime. And then obviously you want to show date and time. Not really so relevant as it relates to a homicide case. Obviously, you need to have the date and time. People want to know when it took place, so the defendant can say, "Oh, I wasn't there. I was out driving around. Perhaps I was on the other side of the country." Those type of situations. So it's fundamental fairness. So they have to prove that. But that's basically what every criminal offense comes down to. On or about this date, at this particular, in the jurisdiction alleged, this crime occurred, this person is deceased, and the defendant did it. And you have to be able to show all of those particular prerequisites normally to get a conviction, right? That's what you need to do. And so here you have the remains are unspecified means. I've had a case where they ruled it was a homicide. And remember, the coroner can have a couple of conclusions when it comes to, cause and manner of death, right? Unspecified means, it was, gunshot, stabbing, something along those lines, blunt force trauma. And then when it comes to, well, was it murder? Was it natural causes? Was it accident or suicide? Don't really have a whole lot. And they can, unspecified, I guess, is when they just really don't know. But obviously when you're buried in the woods, yeah, it's not like it was probably natural causes. And, I don't know, as some people suggested at the time, well, maybe a mountain lion dragged her off. I don't think that mountain lion would drag her off 50 miles. That'd be one heck of a mountain lion. Big one, indeed. No, ladies and gentlemen. I think there was definitely foul play. So then the question becomes, 8 months later after this took place in May of 2020. No, I'm sorry, May of 2000, for goodness sakes. May of 2000. So literally, as Mother Day approaches in just a couple of weeks, we're coming up on 4 years. 4 years. Obviously, the prosecution didn't do such a good job on the first prosecution of it. The question is now, are they going to be able to do that? The problem is for the prosecution, they kind of, got up to the plate and took a big swing and said, oh, it was Barry Morphew, and then realized, oop, we screwed this up. We can't prove this case. Let's dismiss. Now, I would note that the prosecutor said that they knew where her remains were. They were just waiting for the snow to melt. I don't think where the prosecutor thought the remains were or where they found her in any particular way. So there's this DNA evidence out there of somebody else in Suzanne Morphew's car, on her bike, and in her bike helmet, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I do not know exactly what that means. Obviously, you have some third parties, DNA. Apparently, the person that has not been identified to the public was identified through CODIS, which is the system whereby everyone who's convicted of a felony, basically nationwide, has their DNA uploaded into the CODIS system. And so if there's a unidentified individual that they're looking for, they put that DNA profile into the CODIS system, and then the computer goes through, does what it does, and says either match or no match. Okay. Apparently the DNA found in the bike helmet, the bike, and in the car come back to one guy who has a history in at least 3 separate states for sexual offenses. Now, we don't know who it is, but one would think that the prosecution has reached out to try to find out what is the status of this individual. Where did he happen to be in May of 2000 on Mother's Day? Does he have a good alibi? Was he transient, just passing through town? Did he have some reason to, I don't know, who knows, maybe detail the car, did some work at the house when her husband's gone, pick up the yard, move the bike, something along those lines? Who knows? Was it something completely non-nefarious? Or was it something a little more nefarious? I don't know. Incidental contact. Maybe there was contamination. We don't know. Now, obviously, CBI has been involved in this case, and we know CBI has had a little bit of trouble recently with their lab analyst director for 28 years. It basically turned out she was fudging the numbers on lots of cases. So, who knows? Maybe that DNA isn't reliable at all. There's a lot of stuff that can be taking place there for sure. And so, like I said, the remains of Suzanne Morphew, unfortunately, only fit in 3 bags. One did have a skull. The other 2 had the various bones in them. They also submitted some envelopes as well, a purple medical device marked grave. The envelope contains a dirt-covered purple medical port labeled 6328. 7 brown paper bags remain in the custody of CBI and contain a pale patterned baklava, a pink and light-colored leather work glove, a light-colored partial padded bra, a ripped dark blue-gray hooded sweatshirt labeled Crested Butte, a torn green Nike tank top, Yeti shorts, and a fabric fragment. The clothing and fabric fragment are all weathered and covered in dirt. All paper bags were labeled respective to their contents. 6 envelopes remain in the custody of CBI, contain 5 fabric fragments and 1 weathered bullet, and are labeled as such. So they have a weathered bullet out there. Is that how Suzanne Morphew died? Was this maybe just something that's been there for years, long before Suzanne Morphew's remains were dumped at this particular location? Or was there something associated with her death, which goes back to the unspecified means? How did it happen? How did it happen? We don't know, is what they're saying. Now they're saying we were able to, take a draw from the bone, and we had all these items in here. And I was doing just a little bit of show prep today because I like to obviously make sure we're up to speed, being the most fact-driven, unbiased true crime channel in the entire world. We have to be able to make sure we get our facts straight. And the butorphanol nasal spray is used to relieve pain severe enough to require opioid treatment, and when other pain medicines did not work well enough or cannot be tolerated. It's a narcotic analgesic. Can act on the central nervous system. Kind of, ooh. Then we have the azaparone. It's a tranquilizer that can be used in useful, if small, chemical restraint protocols. It's the most common phenothiazine tranquilizer in veterinary medicine and is readily available. Azaparone is classified as a butyrphenone. They have very similar effects. It's a dopamine antagonistic, and it doesn't have any analgesic effect, and heavy sedation produced by drugs like alpha-2 agonists should be expected from the use of this drug. Then we got the medetomidine, is a synthetic drug used as both a surgical anesthetic and analgesic. It's often used for hydrochloride salt. It is an androgenic agonist that can be administered as an intravenous drug solution and sterile water. And obviously, when we go back to the Where was it? When we go back to the medical port, obviously, Suzanne Morphew had been having some medical issues related to some cancer. Wouldn't be uncommon, I guess. Let me know if I'm right or wrong, to have some sort of medical port there. So, basically, whoever is ever charged, the attorneys for them, as well as the prosecution, is, I'm sure, going to have lots and lots of really smart people, pathologists, toxicologists, pharmacologists, to try and weigh in on exactly, is this something related to her medical treatment, or was this related to, a homicide? And that's really what that's going to come down to. And the unspecified means, like I said, I had a case like this once, and it was just odd. And the reason why I even bring it up is because the unspecified means, right? Going back to kind of that LOVID, the LOVID that we have, the location, offense, victim, identification, date and time. That's kind of what you have to do, right? Well, juries really like, this took place, in the parlor with the candlestick, kind of like Clue, by the butler. The butler did it in the parlor with the candlestick, right? And prosecutors don't like to get up and say, I don't know how she died exactly. My particular case, we had 2 small children dead, basically mummified in a car. Bugs everywhere. The pictures were horrific. And all they could say is the kids were dead. That was it. All they could say was the kids are dead. No blunt force trauma. Obviously, the remains were there. No blunt force trauma. No stabbing, no gunshot wound, no broken bones, nothing that they could actually identify to. So, of course, they're like, well, the next option is, well, they must have been starved. They must have been put in that car and starved to death. But they couldn't say it. And then they came up with some weird, funky test where they're trying to say that through these hair follicles that were still on the children's remains, that they could show periods of, if you looked at this scale, that it was, there was starvation here, right? And I still question the technology. I think it was bogus, but the jury was like, hey, starvation, that's it. I got 2 dead kids in a park, or parked in a car on a piece of property, not far from everybody in this little small community. Close enough is what they basically said. And, but, you could tell the jury was perplexed, and the prosecution went to great lengths to try and say how somebody died, right? In that particular case, my case, we had, they had the bodies. They could look at it and say, oh, was there a gunshot wound that went through something, or did it, and even the doctors be like, well, was it just maybe a gunshot wound that went through the body? Well, it was mummified, so there's nothing, no marks, no stab marks, no bullet holes. It was a weird case, and interesting to say the least. I assure you of that. But they really struggled with unspecified means. And like I said, then you got to go back to the identification of, well, who did it? And when the bodies are out in the environment, the longer they are out in the environment, the less likely they're going to have something of evidentiary value as it relates to somebody else's DNA. Pretty unlikely. They found several clothing items that were there: Crested Butte, a torn Nike green tank top, pair of Yeti shorts, a fabric fragment, partial padded bra, light color leather work gloves, leather work glove. Isn't that interesting? A pink and light color leather work glove. We're talking like gardening gloves? Are we talking like, her bike riding gloves? That's interesting. And a pink and light color leather work glove. when I hear work glove, I'm thinking some sort of leather glove that you're going to work in the garden or something along those lines. Not necessarily. It could be, if she was truly out on her bike, maybe she had a pair of, the little biking gloves that go on there, with the little padded things for your hands to not get calluses or something along those lines, I guess. A light color partial padded bra, a ripped dark blue-gray hooded sweatshirt with crusted butte, a torn green Nike tank top, Yeti shorts, and a fabric fragment. They're all weathered and covered in dirt. So, that could have been another, part of her undergarment, something along those lines. Not really sure. And then like I said, the medical device. The medical device is released to the sheriff. A disc of 2 x-rays is released to Dr. Kim. And I don't think I've ever seen on an autopsy report, usually got the person that does the autopsy and maybe a supervisor who reviews it. There were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 doctors at this autopsy. I've never seen, I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm just saying I've never seen it. 5 doctors to be there on top of all the witnesses who were there as well. We had 1, 2 people from the sheriff's department, 1, 2, 3, 4 from the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, somebody from the FBI, another one from the Saguchi County Sheriff's Office, and we had a representative from the 12th Judicial District Office, as well as the Chaffee County Coroner, Jeff Graff, present during the postmortem exam. Now we think, well, why isn't the coroner doing it? Well, to be the coroner, you don't even have to be a doctor. It's an elected official here in the state of Colorado. And if the person is not actually doing the medical examination, because a lot of them aren't, they contract that out, but they're more of an administrative role that takes place, and they pick up the bodies and things like that. So it was a crowded room in there. 5 doctors plus, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 people. There were 14 people there with all the doctors and everybody like that. And there's nothing really much for them to say, I guess. We move on. Items marked TA11, which is possible bones, and TA12 bones are received from CBI to be included in the collection of skeletal remains, subsequently released to Dr. Diane France. After receipt of the remains back to El Paso County for their contained probable rocks. So when they were cleaning everything up, they're probably not sure, is that a bone? Is that a rock? I don't know. Pick it up, let the experts sort it out later. And I just want to see if this is a the Diane France is a thought she was going to do the anthropological examination. Yep, let's see here. Yep, I think this is her. I don't let's take a quick look. Let's see here. Sorry, gotta do this real quick here. I'm trying to think if I remember, because I recently, I think on the 2 dead baby case that we had, we consulted a forensic anthropologist, which is, like I said, very interesting stuff. It really is. We've used them a couple of times. And then we also had to consult. I'm sure you've heard of the body farm, the one down in Nashville is kind of a big deal. that everybody talks about. But unbeknownst to most people, in fact, I wasn't aware of it, there is a body farm in um, Grand Junction. There is a forensic investigation research station, and it's focused on research, teaching, and services regarding the decomposition of human remains. Construction of the state-of-the-art building began 2012, blah, 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 blah. The Forensic Investigative Research Station at Colorado Mesa University is a research, teaching, and service center that focuses on forensic taphonomy and related fields. The mission of this program is to learn and teach about the decomposition of human remains in the Western Colorado environment. The service component of the facility is pursued in part by sharing the expertise of the station with law enforcement, lawyers, coroners, and medical examiner offices. So, like I said, I became familiar with these fine people over there when I had the case, because I got these 2 dead bodies. I got a car covered in like dead flies and maggots, right? And obviously, if you know anything about, that kind of stuff, depending on the decomposition of the body and things of that nature, the timing, you're going to get various bugs and, their life cycle. When did they die? You can try to use that to determine the death. So it's super interesting stuff. Like really interesting stuff, in my opinion, with the science that goes along with it. And then you can get the anthropologist as well. I remember talking with this anthropologist lady, very smart. Oh, I loved her. She was great. She's probably been teaching like 60 years or something, right? Learned all about the history of the hyoid bone on a strangulation case, saying, oh, that old hyoid bone, you can break that easily. Well, no, you can't. Okay. It depends on the circumstances. Let's just put it that way. But it was very, very interesting. And so it just shows you all of the science people, that come together, right? To have forensic pathologists, forensic psychologists. You got forensic, which just means forensics means that it relates to the legal business, so to speak, courts, testifying in court, forensics. And so all these different people come together to try and determine the best they can what was the cause and manner of death and what time did it actually happen. They're going to be looking at this, and this is a very generic autopsy. This is obviously the one for public consumption, but I do believe there will be a more detailed one. But really, what more can you say? And like I said, when we're going back here, 1 bag containing 4 packets botany/bug and 2 packets from hoodie are received on January 16th from Dr. Diane France. The femurs are sectioned and the proximal and distal metaphyses for toxicology and DNA samples. I'll return to them. Very, very, very generic test, in my opinion. 3 teeth were released to CBI for further DNA testing to further confirm that was her, even though they had a dentist there to make sure that the stuff, was in fact they identified through dental records. So I don't know. I honestly do not know if this case is going to be solved. Now, I hope it is, for the family of Suzanne Morphew, for the people that cared about her. I just don't know, given the amount of time that has lapsed, that there's going to be something to warrant it. I mean, the prosecution, and I'm not saying this like, oh, Scott, you're just beating up on the prosecution. You're a defense attorney. No. But I think the prosecution went a long way in screwing this case up in the future, because if somebody else is charged, or if they're was evidence presented that Barry Morphew was involved. And we're certainly not saying that he is. We're giving everybody the presumption of innocence here. But obviously all the, like I said, bumbling missteps that the prosecution took the first time through, it's all going to be relevant the second time through. And they're going to say, oh, you're just, if they charge Barry Morphew, they're going to, you're just focusing on Barry Morphew because you got it wrong the first time. And now you got to be right this time. And whoever's charged subsequent to that, they're going to say, well, you had the guy, you're just trying to blame me. So short of some sort of DNA, which is highly unlikely to be recovered from the remains of Suzanne Morphew there, that's been out in the woods for some 4 years now. Unless somebody admits to it or somebody else comes forward and says, hey, somebody else admitted to it, I think it's going to be very, very difficult. And even if somebody had a cell phone on their person, given the area where that is, and if you've ever driven in the mountains, I know they always show those coverage locations, when they sell, get us, it's the best cell service ever. In the mountains, I don't care how good it is, it just doesn't work. And sometimes it doesn't work when you're heading on I-70, driving past Vail, you lose signals. So, and you go farther southwest, let's face it, they're not exactly building the best phone system they can to get everything, all the data from those phones. And remember, that data is not there for law enforcement purposes. It's just been, predominantly used for that. All that cell phone data, tower stuff was originally designed for the engineers to see how good their setup was. And if we were dropping calls, do we need to move the antenna over a little bit and rotate the top? That's what it really was for. And obviously it's turned into a huge, huge tool for law enforcement these days. So, wow. Wow, Frank, look at that. 42 minutes in, and I haven't taken a breath. I told Frank beforehand, I said, Frank, we gotta sell some stuff, man. It's everyone keeps telling me you gotta sell stuff on your channel. And it's probably the hardest part. It was probably the hardest part of when I opened my own practice, right? I get out of the military. I had an endless supply of clients because the Marine Corps gave them to me, right? And so you were just used to helping people. You were just like, oh, you come in, young Marine, let me help you out. Oh, you got a problem? Let me fix that problem for you. Then you get to the private world, you want to help people. And then you have to realize you have to learn the word no, that you can't work for free. And so, we resolved that. And then, obviously, when you set up a YouTube channel, it's always great. The first several years, it was like, we're just going to build subscribers. That's what it's all about. And then people are like, oh, you got to build, you got to generate revenue. We're like, okay, well, it just started out as fun. But yeah, let's see what we can do with that too. And then we get sponsors, right? And we've been associated with CrimeTalkSearch.com, right? It's a background subscription service. If you go to CrimeTalkSearch.com, you can sign up for that background subscription service. And the beautiful thing about it is, while you have that background subscription service, guess what? You can do as many searches as you would like. And the next best thing is you can keep it or you can cancel it. I keep a subscription and I pay for it myself. And we use it at the law firm all the time. We use it at home. The lovely Miss Kristen has incredible investigative skills, and something comes up and, hey, or a friend will ask, hey, do you have an investigator that, we can use? Like, well, why don't you just go to crimetalksearch.com and sign up, and you can do it yourself. At least try to, right? It's super easy. You type in the name of the person you want to search something about, you sign up, you put in their name, date of birth, what city, and it does the work, asks you a bunch of questions, and boom, you get the report once you're satisfied that is the right person. So it is a good service. We use it here at the law firm, and sometimes we get better results than sometimes even what the professional investigators can do. And I love my investigators. And every now and then you ask me, you're like, that's it? That's it? Wow. So yeah, it's that kind of situation. So go to crimetalksearch.com. I'm not gonna lie, we make a few bucks on it, but I'm not quitting my day job just yet, but still trying to build that Crime Talk network, ladies and gentlemen. Crime Talk network. Can you imagine it? Yes, I can. Where you have people that actually know what they're doing. I mean, not to brag my own too, but you go to some of those other places and man, they're people, oh yeah, I'm a lawyer, but when was the last time they were ever in a courtroom? When was the last time they ever tried a homicide case? Like I said, this was never I'm going to do this. It was the Chris Watts case, ladies and gentlemen. The Chris Watts case took place just up the road. And, a friend of mine said, man, you should set up a channel. Man, no one's going to listen to me. No way. No way. And they did. They did. We had some crazy huge videos early on. I thought, wow, there could be something to this. And what I found out was that there are a lot of people that obviously are very, very interested in what takes place in the true crime realm, but they are so passionate about it and they're very educated about it, but they still want to learn more and more. And I think that obviously what we give you is an explanation of what's taking place on both what the prosecutors are thinking and what the defense is thinking as well. So enough of that nonsense. Enough about me. Let's talk about some more cases for a while. Next on the lineup tonight, yes, Bryan Kohberger. Will he just say where he was? Enough already. Enough already. I get it, but defense and people say, "Oh, Scott, you favor the defense because I said the prosecutors were acting like a bunch of idiots last time." And I said, no, we call it the way we see it. That's why it's the most fact-driven, unbiased. We will throw, I wouldn't say daggers, but the truth around wherever it lies. And in this particular case, Bryan Kohberger, obviously, pursuant to the Idaho statute that we discussed today, needs to provide where he was at the time of the murder. That's what the statute requires. And the prosecution says, hey, you've had 1.5 years to come up with this. Why can't you just give us the answer? Driving around somewhere between Washington State and Moscow, Idaho is not an alibi. Who are you going to call? You're going to call a phone guy? What's the guy's name? No, that's the other guy. It was the Psy guy. Why can't I think of his name off the top of my head? Because I got so many names floating around in my head. Not a doctor. Cy Ray. I got his curriculum vitae right here. Because I always have my stack of stuff, of relevant stuff as it relates to the important cases that we've been following. And we have the old curriculum vitae. Don't you just hate that, right? Curriculum vitae. Yeah, we used to call it a resume. What's your resume got there, right? I mean, I get curriculum vitaes from like lawyers or they just graduated and passed the bar. Here's my curriculum vitae. Because you're fancy that way, right? How about you just say, here's my resume? Okay. But they don't. They always want to do that. But anyway, so Cy Ray, experienced guy, a lot of information, law enforcement experience. He's going to say that through these radio frequencies, you're going to be able to provide a much better explanation as to where apparently Bryan Kohberger was. Because right now it's just simply allegedly innocence. Hey, I have a vitae. Well, so do I. I've been qualified as an expert witness a couple of times, and they're like, well, can you send over your CV? I'm like, my resume? Yeah, that's it. Yeah. I don't know. I think it's just, you know, like I said, lawyers just always, or, professionals always have to do something to distinguish that, like, oh, I'm fancier than anybody else because, Joe Blow has a resume. I have a curriculum vitae. Everyone just trying to be fancy. When everybody knows it's like, okay, it's a fancy word for resume, right? You're supposed to put on your legal research, times you've been qualified. It's a resume, ladies and gentlemen. But anyway, we digress. Sorry. You have not yet perfected the pompous ass role, Scott. The universities are full of them. Oh, I could come up with a very, very pompous ass because, a curriculum vitae establishes one's expertise in a particular area, not to mention his study, how many times he's been published, which has been peer reviewed, obviously. But let's not forget all the teaching that I've done to professionals throughout the years. So, yeah, it's a resume, right? The beautiful thing is, though, I remember when I had to prepare a CV, a resume, a couple years ago when I was an expert witness in a case. They're like, well, is this all you've got? And I'm like, well, it's got my education. Says what I've, my jobs I've had in the last 30 years. Like, well, how about cases? How about this? Really? I mean, it's a lot of work to keep up on all that stuff. I mean, I don't keep track of how many cases I've tried anymore. I stopped keeping track of that a long time ago. The only stat we really keep is how many not guilties on first-degree murder cases, like, walk you out the door. No other lesser included offenses. Okay. 8, ladies and gentlemen. 8. Not going to brag, but I think that's pretty rare. So hopefully that's why you would want to follow us and say, hey, maybe this guy knows what the heck he's talking about. Anyway, so Bryan Kohberger, let's get back to him. All right. Alibi. Just tell us, for God's sakes, where he was. And if you don't know, just say, yeah, we don't intend to submit any alibi testimony. All that stuff is going to come through as it relates to cross-examination of the government's experts as it relates to the phone evidence where they're trying to say that his phone was turned off or he was in a particular area. But obviously the big hanger is going to be for him as it relates to the DNA evidence apparently found on that's right, the knife sheath on the K-bar. Now, once again, your host tonight, ladies and gentlemen, where else do you find this? That he has a CV, he's testified as an expert, he's got 8 not guilties on first-degree murders, like walking people out the door, none of that lesser included stuff, 8, and he just happens to have, as a demonstrative aid, a K-bar, which was allegedly used in that type of knife was allegedly used in the case against Bryan Kohberger of the 4 young, innocent college students, right? I have one here. Why? Because I guess you could say Scott Reich at CrimeTalk is, I don't know what's the words to say, maybe a Renaissance man, right? As a young lad, he had joined the military to go off to do great adventurous things. And, well, that didn't quite happen. He wound up, stationed basically in Colorado for most of that time in the reserves. Went to college, was supposed to fly. Didn't quite work out either. Next thing you know, goes to law school, goes back on active duty. But he has his K-bar that he got when he graduated from boot camp. Wait for it. Pick the year. All right. Whoever comes closest in the next 10 seconds of the year that your host graduated from boot camp. I don't know. Maybe we'll give you a complimentary Patreon pass if you would like to join. So go ahead and pick wisely, ladies and gentlemen. Don't age me too much. Oh my God. And we have a winner, Samantha Cirillo. Did I pronounce that correctly, Samantha? Yes. 1988. Graduated from boot camp. Still remember, went in 6th June of 1988. Who can forget that day when you go into the military? No one ever will. I assure you, if you've gone, you know what I am talking about. You've been up all night. You don't know what the heck is going on. And the first thing when they give you like 2 hours of sleep, and of course you didn't sleep for the prior week because you didn't know what to expect. I mean, you kind of knew what to expect. You just didn't know that you're going to be up all night and you're stressed, and you finally get to sleep at like 3 a.m. and then they wake you up at 4 a.m. And the first thought that comes out of your mouth when those lights come on or in your head is, what have I done? So, yes. All right, Samantha. Samantha Cirillo, we got it correct. Hey, will you reach out to Frank and we will give you a complimentary pass to our Patreon show here in just a few minutes. Should I give her your email, Frank?
Yep.
Send it to Frank at Reisch, REISCH, lawfirm.com. And he can send you that pass there, Samantha. And you can have a free guest pass to the Patreon show this evening, where it is I think we had over 600 people at one point earlier this evening. It's a nice, quaint conversation. You'll find a lot of family and community almost, because people spend their time talking amongst themselves oftentimes. And she gave the CrimeTalk at Rice Law Firm as well for business inquiries, questions, information. Yeah, either way. So yeah, it's a good time. And then of course we also do, when we do the Patreon show, we try to come up with a collective Magic 8-Ball question that we'll ask the Magic 8-Ball. So to give you a little preview, this won't be the same question, but maybe we'll just do one tonight just to tease you all as to the facts, because let's face it, aren't all of the world's life difficult questions? Isn't it much easier just to delegate what should take place to the Magic 8-Ball? I think so. Can't hurt, right? What could possibly go wrong? Like Magic 8-Ball. Will someone be charged as it relates to the death of Suzanne Morphew in the future? What say you, Magic 8-Ball? And the Magic 8-Ball spinning around here says, as I see it, yes. Now, you probably can't see that. Maybe we need to do like a mobile cam so we could show it right as it happens. But that's what it's saying. As I see it, yes. So I hope the Magic 8-Ball is correct. And let's face it, we have a lot to talk about yet this evening, because this show goes for roughly an hour or so. We touched on Brian Kohberger. Obviously, we spent a lot of time on Suzanne Morphew. We got the Karen Reed case that started today. Richard Allen wasn't get charged. This is all the stuff that I didn't even get to today. My gosh, we probably need a live every night. We can't do that. And also let you know, we are taking a break from Crime Talk on Tuesday night, but for only 1 week next week. We'll do it probably Wednesday night. And you say, well, why is that? Well, you know, Frank, the man on the other side of the screen over there, one that controls all the magic buttons, makes me look better than I really am. It's his birthday, ladies and gentlemen. It's his birthday. So happy birthday, Frank. Happy pre-birthday. So next Tuesday, we won't be here. What do you want for your birthday, Frank? Do you want to like a Patreon membership? We can probably hook that up for you, right?
Yeah.
How about a K-bar? Would you like a K-bar? We could do that too. How about a nice highlighter? Maybe something like that. No, we'll come up with something better for you for your birthday. All right, Frank. But so that's where we will be or not be here. We won't be here next Tuesday. We'll probably do it Wednesday or whatever night, to be determined, because like I said, his family has big plans for him. we may need to give him a day to recover, something along those lines. But I don't know. It's going to be fancy, because Frank is a father of 3 young children. What are they? What are they like? About 8 to 2, Frank? 8 to 2, something like that. Yeah, the man has energy. I can text that man in the middle of the night and I get a response, or first thing in the morning. He's like, yeah. I'm like, Frank, you got to be here early for this. And he's like, oh, don't worry, I'm up. I got it taken care of, right? Those trials on the East Coast, who's taking care of that? Frank, the hardest working man in show business, right? This stuff just does not happen just like that miraculously. It takes a lot of work, planning, and preparation, and that's what Frank does. So, all right, that's all we have for you tonight. But, when you're a Patreon member, you can bounce over there, hit that link in just a couple of minutes. We'll be there. We got a lot to talk about, and of course, take everyone's questions. And there's a lot fewer people there, but we do that. And as you notice, we don't ask or beg for super chats or anything like that, like a lot of people do. But I can tell you that it does make it easier when it's highlighted. But anyway, enough of that. All right, thank you all for joining us. We appreciate you. We know there's lots of things you could be doing. The fact that you took the time to spend it with us, we are humbled. We are appreciative. We say thank you, and we'll see you next week sometime. Not Tuesday, because it's Frank's birthday. Remember that. Sometime next week. Have a wonderful night.